Hello, and welcome to Insights with Dr. C. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas Carpenter. I'm a clinical psychologist who has been in practice for 20 years. My wife, Mary Carpenter, licensed master social worker, and I are the owners of Insight Counseling Service in Rochester, Michigan. And today we have an interesting topic to discuss. We're going to talk about the paths to divorce and how a certified divorce financial analyst can help. That is a mouthful. And we have with us today Rhonda Williams. Hi, Rhonda. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Who is a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst from Ameriprise Financial Advisors in Rochester, Michigan. So she has a lot to explain to us today. But just to provide you some general information, we all are aware of divorce, and the research shows that over 50% of divorces happen in first-time marriages, and oftentimes it's within the first 7 years of marriage. Second marriages tend to end in divorce more than 75% of the time, and third marriages end in divorce over 90% of the time. So it is definitely a topic that is important and worth discussing, and your financial information is very important as you go through a divorce. So I met Rhonda a few months ago and just loved the work that she was doing and thought it would be very important to bring her on the show and let her share her wealth of information with all of you out there who are enjoying watching the show. So, Rhonda,
yes,
please explain to me and all the viewers out there, what is a certified divorce financial analyst?
So a CDFA is someone who joins your divorce team. And typically, you'll have your lawyers involved, but a CDFA comes in as a support person for you or for the lawyer to crunch out some of the numbers in regards to settlements. And a CDFA is also someone who empowers you with knowledge as you're going through the process. A lot of times you might feel like you're in the dark because you don't want to call your attorney and have that bill show up. Okay. And the lawyer will encourage you to call your CDFA, because that's not how we bill. We have an open door policy, typically as CDFAs, and our goal is education. And we're more the strategist on the team. We're the person who is saying what if, and how can we be creative in this solution.
So you actually save people money.
In a way.
By not calling the attorney all the time.
Right, exactly.
Awesome.
So it's a way for you to have an access to experts that you might not, seek out simply because of that fear of being billed by your attorney. And the other things that we do are, we're expert witnesses. So if a divorce did end up going to trial, a CDFA could be called by your attorney to defend your position in seeking an asset or explaining a pension calculation, and that happens quite frequently within a divorce situation.
All right. Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like it's an interesting job. It sounds like you're in a role of a peacemaker.
A lot of it is, and because we're trying to find out what's the most fair thing that can happen in this divorce. That's the role of the CDFA.
Mm-hmm. And you probably see what kind of the traditional role of divorce is a lot of fighting.
A lot of acrimony.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you really are a peacemaker. You come in and find out what's equitable and fair.
Yeah, in some situations, there are different paths that somebody can take to divorce that would end up being that way, yes.
All right. Mm-hmm. Great. We know that divorce can be stressful financially and emotionally. So what can someone do to prepare financially before the divorce?
Well, it might be really tempting to go out and burn all your spouse's belongings and, take a key and carve your name into that leather seat.
Right.
But
like country music tells us to do,
right? Like country music tells you to do. But I'm here to say that's not what you should do. And, don't grab the stock portfolio and the kids and run for the hills, because you never know which path your divorce is going to take, and that you might end up going before a judge where you would have to answer for your actions, and then that judge will make decisions that could affect you and your children for the rest of your lives.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So there are some things, though, that you can do They don't include destroying property.
Good.
And it kind of deals with really practical things, such as, making a list of all of your assets and finding out whether something is jointly owned or separately owned, and understanding your debts and the debts that might be associated with assets. So pretty much, literally getting your house in order. You want to find tax returns and any bank statements and make copies of them. And, we would say, heck, just take the whole filing cabinet down to Kinko's and copy everything that you have on your financial life that you've held together or separately, so that you've got documentation.
Would you recommend that the divorcing couple try to get together and make that list together?
Yeah.
Or is that something that you recommend each person do individually?
I think that's kind of case by case, and that gets into, how divorce will play out. So a lot of times, someone will just decide that they want a divorce. And so they'll go file on their own. And when that happens, it leads that couple on a designated path. But hopefully, therapists and financial advisors and certified divorce financial analysts can be there before somebody files for divorce and help them talk through what are these options that you have for divorce. And so the making of lists and things like that could be done individually or could be done as a couple. No matter which one, that's what needs to happen before somebody files for divorce.
I mean, I could be jumping way ahead here, but I can imagine, just like in my own family, my mother has always been a stay-at-home housewife.
Yes.
My dad has been the financial investor. She would be clueless when it comes to making that list. But I could see how that could be very problematic, too, if you have one person who knows more information and can withhold information from the other party, or isn't willing to share it, or
and that's where, there are some structures in place in any form that a divorce takes where each individual and as a party together need to disclose, what they have, and that's done through interrogatories. But what we're leading toward here in this discussion is talking about, different paths to divorce and the different forms that this can take. And there are really three basic paths to divorce.
Okay.
And the first one is mediation, and then there's collaborative divorce, and then there's traditional divorce.
Okay. So can you kind of go through and tell us a little bit about each one of those, just so our viewers will have an understanding of what their options might be?
Yeah, so the best way to describe mediation is, imagine that two children want an orange, and there's only one orange. And so the natural process of thinking would be, well, we're going to divide that orange in half, and you're going to take your half of an orange, and I'm going to take my half of an orange. But where mediation is different is it goes and digs deeper than what people want to what they really need. And so during mediation, with that orange analogy, it might be that I really want to eat the orange and you really want to cook the orange. And so what a mediator would say is, well, we're going to give Rhonda the orange to eat and we're going to give you the peel because you want to cook with it. And so we each get what we need, where before, as a couple or as individuals or the two kids won that orange, it's all about what they want. And so the mediator helps people isolate these issues and helps them ferret out exactly what would be fair and equitable.
Okay.
So, but in any case, a mediator will work with a couple you can have one mediator, and typically it would be a lawyer who would be doing this, acting as mediator, meeting with a couple before they file for divorce. And so they're doing all of the pre-work together with this mediator about asset division or how to handle liabilities or what to do about child support and child custody and alimony, and all of these issues get hammered out before anybody files for divorce in mediation. And so the more work that you could do as a couple before you go meet with a mediator, the faster the process will be and the less expensive it will be.
I guess I rarely see that, maybe because of the line of work that I'm in. As a counselor, I see the couples come in and they're arguing and they decide to get a divorce, and I guess I just don't have the privilege of seeing couples work together very often before they filed for divorce. I mean, I think since I've met you, that's something, if I'm working with a couple and they start heading down that road, that I definitely suggest now is meeting with you, meeting with a financial advisor, or getting a mediator and working on this ahead of time, but
Right.
how many people just in the general public would know to do that or would understand the value of it?
I think it's a growing field of practice for lawyers too, and a lot of lawyers burned out on traditional divorce and were looking for alternative paths to continue their career. And in fact, in the state of Michigan, mediation and collaborative divorce, I think it's last year, was finally recognized as a mode of practice for divorce.
Okay.
And so we're talking pretty new practice, but mediation has been around for a long time.
Right.
And I think a lot of mediated divorces, you would find that in the public. Typically, how a person comes to mediation is they're looking at their children, and maybe they themselves are the child of a divorced family and have seen unhealthy behavior. But, they know that they're headed that way as a couple and are saying, I want to do this differently. And there are different forms that it can take. There are attorneys who will meet with one party and they'll file with that one person for divorce, but do mediation with the spouse who would come in. So the attorney is just representing one person. But typical mediation is where both spouses are there and they're working out their disagreements with the mediator. And simple cases can happen in 4 to 6 sessions, and more complicated, 10, 11 sessions of mediation, but far less expensive. It's, typically around $3,000 for someone to go through a mediated divorce versus $15,000 in 18 months for a case that might be litigated. So what a CDFA does in that role in mediation is typically works in the background. And I've had a lot of people who've come to me and they're working with an attorney in mediation, but maybe they're not understanding the terminology at the table. And they're saying, we're making agreements, but I don't know how this affects me. And so can you tell me, as a financial professional, if I agree to this settlement that my husband and I, the mediator, have gone through, what impact is that going to have on me? And sometimes in the process of doing that, we've uncovered things and we've said, your pension isn't worth what he's saying it's worth, because they're kind of grabbing at straws in this. And let's take this information back to the mediation table and say, this is our calculation because we're actually doing it. And this is the impact that it's going to have on you long term. And sometimes finding that settlements may look fair. Remember the orange analogy?
Yes.
May appear fair because we've sliced the orange in half, equal, but that may not necessarily be the fair settlement for that person.
What is the difference then between mediation and collaborative divorce? You've used that term a lot.
Right.
And I don't know that a lot of people in the general public might understand that.
Right. No, and collaborative is very new. Collaborative divorce takes the mediation part of the divorce process, and then you form a real team. So both parties in the household, the husband and the wife, would need to seek out their own attorneys who are trained in the strategies of collaborative divorce. And then they add to their team a certified divorce financial analyst and a therapist. And so as a group, we are all coming to the table on structured meetings to say, let's talk through the issues of child custody and child support and alimony and who keeps the house and how the mortgage would be paid. And so instead of 2 lawyers, which is traditional divorce, or a mediation where 2 people are sitting there with an attorney, but maybe they don't have all the information in mediation. And that's why someone may come to me and we're doing this work in the background, and then they're taking it back to the table. Collaborative divorce is all professionals meeting with both sides at the same time. And so people, there are lawyers who believe that this is pie in the sky and that, how can you resolve conflict in this way? I mean, people come into divorce with all of these, preset animosity. I mean, they're getting divorced, right? And so there would be conflict, and there's conflict in collaborative divorce, except it's managed by professionals who aren't going to pit against one another and aren't going to escalate the stress.
Okay. And so just to clarify, in collaborative divorce, did you say each party has their own attorney that is certified or
Trained in collaborative strategies,
Okay.
yes.
Is there ever a case where they use the same
No,
attorney?
typically not.
No.
No.
Okay.
Because they need someone to represent their own interest at
All
the
right.
table. And so because of that, there's a participation agreement between these two attorneys. And they say that if we're not able to solve the issues at the table here in collaborative divorce, we will not represent you in litigation. You will have to go
Okay.
find other attorneys.
So everybody involved is kind of in the role of being a peacemaker,
Peacemaker.
as far as equity.
Well, everybody's got something invested to make it work.
Right.
And then the outcome is a lot of the terminology thrown around collaborative divorces is it's the story of your children's divorce. That the focus in collaborative divorce is how to best represent the interests of children and then how to help the two parties talk to each other so that they can be parents. They will have to continue to be parents in that role.
Well, and just to throw in some psychological information here,
Please.
and I think I've said this in other shows, but the research shows that the more the parents get along and are collaborative
That's
through the
right.
divorce and even after the divorce is a clear indicator of how well the children are going to be adjusted and adjust to the divorce process. So I really would encourage everyone out there who's considering divorce. I don't care how much you like or dislike your spouse. Your goal really should be to continue to work collaboratively on a financial, emotional, child support level, to work collaboratively together and equal and keep it peaceful, because that's how your kids will adjust.
And it's important to note, though, that there may be a case where traditional divorce is the way that a couple needs to go. So there are examples where, and you can imagine, you're the counselor,
right?
That if you had someone who was mentally unstable at the table in collaborative divorce, that you might not be able to make progress in that situation.
Right.
So
they might really struggle with grasping the concepts or really understanding the reality of the situation.
Right. Or if there's been abuse in some way,
Right.
and one of the parties, that most people recommend that in that situation, you would probably end up in a traditional divorce environment. A lot of people who practice collaborative law say that 80 to 90% of all divorce cases could be settled collaboratively, but there are some that shouldn't be. Just remember, though, and also I'll say this, that sometimes you may not, if you're in the process of divorce and you're in a traditional divorce environment where there are two attorneys who are managing and kind of hammering out your settlement without including you in a lot of the decision making sometimes, because they're trying to get the best deal for their side. They're trying to win. And sometimes those are the ones that end up, because they escalate and people can't agree, they end up going to court. Although very few in Oakland County, someone told me the other day, 2% of divorce cases end up in a court situation in Oakland County. But
I know that when I have a couple and they have decided to go for divorce, even if it's going to be traditional divorce, I will still warn them, be careful about the attorney that you choose.
Right.
And make sure this attorney is going to hear what your wants and desires are and what your needs are, and that they are not going to turn this into a lion's den. You know, where they're going after things or encouraging you to go after things that are just going to be more costly and cause more problems. You know, it seems to be like I've met some situations where certain attorneys seem like they're just trying to drive up the cost of the divorce.
Well, and part of it is that's what they do.
Right.
And so if, you know, there's a phrase that says that, you know, if you want to build a home, don't go out and hire a demolition expert. And that's what hiring an aggressive lawyer is.
Right.
That, you know, they're meant to break down and to attack the other side. And so, but, you know, there probably are situations where that might be relevant and that could be used. But I think on the whole, what we're missing in the collaborative community, collaborative practice community in Michigan is trying to get across is that think about mediation and collaborative divorce before you immediately go out and hire an aggressive lawyer for your divorce. That there might be ways that are more streamlined and more effective, and a lot of times these divorce situations and the settlements don't stick because I mean, one example that came up this week is a woman who, this is, an example I heard at a conference, woman in Ohio that, she had a pension in Ohio, and her husband wanted the pension, and they were in this, acrimony, and it was pitting against each other, and there was no real financial person in the background saying, well, what is this? And turns out that the settlement will ended up be voided because she's ineligible to collect on the benefits that he had over here.
From another state?
Another state, and so she forfeited all of her pension, and she's getting nothing in return because the focus was on winning.
Right.
And getting something from the other instead of on being fair. And mediation and collaborative divorce is about being fair and making sure that the settlement that you write is going to stick. So that entire thing will be unwound in the courts.
Okay. So of the 3 types of divorce that we've discussed, and it's probably based on the situation, but what do you think yields the best outcome?
Well, I think it's what you and I have been describing, is that if there are children involved, then mediation and collaborative divorce will allow a couple to communicate afterwards, because the whole purpose is getting people at a table together to talk about what the issues are and how to settle them and creating a settlement that will stick. And a lot of times if the focus is on winning or hurting the other one, War of the Roses, then those situations do not stand the test of time. And no matter what, if you're going through divorce, you want to make sure that, as Gene Washington in your group says, that, you have smooth paths for your children to walk on between each other, and that, it's not covered in glass.
So let's go this route for a minute. Let's say I'm a man who has recently went through a divorce. So now I'm left with my part of the assets or the finances. How can you help me after the divorce?
So that's right. I mean, you're starting a new life. You've been through this traumatic experience, and now you have to start rebuilding. And a lot of times people are left off worse off, most cases, after a divorce because of the expense of divorcing and setting up 2 households. And so just like any other situation with finances, it's building a plan where you focus on what your cash flow is and your insurance needs and making sure that you're covering these children or your ex-spouse with insurance to make sure that they're provided for if something happens to you. And looking at starting to set some goals for yourself that, now you're on your own. It doesn't mean you won't be able to retire. Now let's set a realistic retirement date and start to rebuild your wealth so that you can do that. And then very importantly, looking at estate planning, making sure that your will reflects your wishes right now, and that if you don't want your ex-spouse to be a part of that, you better go write a will or perhaps get a trust to guarantee that your children will benefit from the portfolio and the assets that you start to rebuild with.
Okay. How does the cost for your services vary from in the middle of the divorce process to then maybe working with you after the divorce process? Are those fees similar? How is the structure?
They're pretty similar based on complexity of the situation. So you might see a CDFA, divorce financial analyst, his fees might be built into the entire divorce, as a part of that process, depending on the platform. And post-divorce, that really depends. I mean, a lot of times a financial advisor will just continue that relationship in the hopes that they can help somebody rebuild their life and grow. But, it would be a range of fees, typically between $500 and $1,000 to work with a CDFA in a divorce.
So very realistic. I think that price sounds very affordable. Yeah. Well, Rhonda, on a personal level, what's the most rewarding part of your job?
Well, I think, a lot of times I'll have, especially women who come in with that deer in the headlights look. They're going through a divorce, maybe not something that they wanted. And then by providing them with education and empowering them to understand and make good financial decisions and to walk to the table, where they may feel like they were at home and then they, didn't have a voice in finances, but giving them a voice during the process and after, and feeling confident that the settlement is agreeable to them and something that will help them be okay.
Awesome. Tell us how to reach you.
Okay.
How do we get a hold of these kinds of resources?
So I'm in Rochester on Main Street, 425 South Main. I'm with Ameriprise Financial Advisors, and you can reach me at 248-652 1-866 or at rhonda.t.williams@ampf.com.
Okay. Do you have a website that people might visit?
Yes, I would encourage you to go to Ameriprise.com and you just enter my name and find an advisor, Rhonda Williams.
Okay, so the process to start, or a person who's seeking divorce would just call you and set up an appointment?
Yeah, you call my office, talk to Esther, and we'll schedule a time to sit down together. And typically I don't charge for the first meeting because I think it's important for our clients to get to know me a little bit, and I get to know them and make sure that this is something I can really help with, and give them an opportunity to decide if they would like to work with me.
Okay. And then just to also reiterate, the first few things that you would want somebody to bring to a first session, would it be that list we were discussing?
It's a list of assets and income and debts and benefits that you may have.
Okay, so any paperwork that would display those numbers.
Bring that filing cabinet in.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, Rhonda, we're so happy that you were with us today.
You
gave us some great information. As I said at the beginning of the show, divorces can be such a traumatic process for families. And if you're out there and you are thinking about a divorce, I really want to encourage you to be careful about allowing your emotions to rule you, and think about the process of what you need to do. That mediation or a collaborative divorce could be very beneficial to you and your spouse in saving you a lot of money, and saving you a lot of time, heartache, hard feelings. I really think it's the way to go. It's an important step. The work that Rhonda does is just a very important step. So, in closing today, I would like to say feel free to visit our website at www.insightcounselingpc.com or our Facebook page, where you can submit topics that you would like to see discussed on the show or questions that you would like to see addressed. I'd like to thank Rhonda for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, live well.